Welcome back to the deep dive. You sent us some news articles about, a drive-by shooting in Texarkana, Arkansas, and, well, you're looking to kind of get a deeper understanding of what happened, like, how could this happen in a place that's supposed to be safe? So let's dive in and see what we can uncover.
Yeah, you're right to point out that contrast, right? You've got this family-friendly neighborhood, and all of a sudden, bam, it's a violent crime scene. It's that unexpected element that really just shakes people up.
For sure. The incident itself took place on a Sunday evening. We're talking multiple 911 calls reporting gunshots, near the intersection of Vernal and Bramble Streets. Imagine the fear in those voices, the operators trying to get a handle on things. Police arrive, and it's just a chaotic scene. Spent shell casings are scattered all over the intersection.
Like a sudden burst of violence. Life's normal, then suddenly chaos and potential tragedy. The articles mention a 26-year-old, Tracy Davis. He arrived at the hospital with a gunshot wound to the head, critically injured, fighting for his life.
It really brings home the human cost of gun violence. Tracy Davis isn't a statistic. He's a son, maybe a brother, a friend. His life hangs in the balance, and his loved ones are dealing with so much trauma.
Exactly. It makes you realize this could happen to anyone. Anywhere.
Yeah.
It's that randomness that's so terrifying.
And it makes you wonder what led to this. Drive-by shootings, they seem to come out of nowhere, but there has to be some kind of trail.
That's the thing about these investigations. They get really interesting. See, drive-bys are notoriously difficult to solve. You have the element of surprise, the quick getaway. Gathering evidence is a real challenge for the police. They have to be meticulous. They're combing the scene, looking for anything. Fingerprints, tire tracks, really anything that could lead back to whoever did this. And of course, they're searching for witnesses, hoping someone saw something, even a tiny detail.
Right, like those crime shows where they zoom in on a tiny fiber and it breaks the case wide open. But I wonder, are there any techniques specific to drive-by shootings?
You've hit on something crucial. There's a whole area of forensic science dedicated to bullet trajectories. So by mapping the path of the bullets, investigators can sometimes determine the vehicle's position, maybe even the shooter's location, and the type of firearm used. It's like solving a puzzle using physics.
Wow, I had no idea. That's incredible, the level of detail they can get to. But I'm thinking technology has to play a big role too, right? Surveillance footage and all that.
Oh, absolutely. Cameras are everywhere these days. That's been a game changer. Investigators are carefully going through footage from traffic cameras, businesses, even doorbell cameras from the neighborhood, all to try and find any sign of that vehicle.
I bet that's like finding a needle in a haystack. But I guess even a partial plate or a quick glimpse of the driver could be a big break in the case.
You got it. It really shows how important community involvement is. Someone might have dash cam footage or maybe a security camera at their house that caught something crucial. Even the smallest detail can make a huge difference.
Right, that sense of community must be crucial, especially in a close-knit place like this. The articles mention that residents are feeling a lot of fear, understandably.
Of course. This shooting, it shattered the feeling of safety people had. Parents are having those tough conversations with their kids about staying safe. Neighbors are probably looking at each other differently now, with a mix of suspicion and fear.
And it's not just feeling unsafe at the moment, it's the long-term impact. That can really affect the community.
For sure. It might lead to less community engagement. People might not want their kids playing outside anymore or even going to events. It creates an atmosphere of fear that's hard to shake off.
It almost feels like Texarkana is a microcosm of the bigger issue of gun violence in America. These tragedies keep happening. It's hard to even grasp it all.
I think you're right to make that connection. The details are different each time, but there are these recurring themes. Easy access to guns, differences in socioeconomic status, and the way violence is portrayed in the media.
Yeah, it's a tangled web of problems. But before we go too far down that national conversation, I want to come back to Texarkana specifically. You mentioned socioeconomic differences. What makes them relevant here?
It's a key question. It's too early to know the motives behind this particular shooting, but studies consistently show a link between poverty, the lack of opportunity, and higher rates of violent crime. So we need to consider Texarkana's economic situation and see if there are any underlying factors that might have contributed to this.
So it's not just about what happened during the shooting, but the bigger picture, the context.
Right. Things like unemployment rates, access to education and job training, and what social services are available. They all play a role in creating an environment where crime might be more likely to occur.
So let's dig into that a bit. What do we know about Texarkana economically speaking. What's the community like where this happened?
Well, Texarkana is an interesting place. It sits right on the border of Arkansas and Texas, so you've got this unique blend of influences and, well, challenges. Poverty rates are higher than the national average there, and that often means strained resources, limited opportunities, especially for young people.
So you're saying some residents might feel stuck, like they don't have many options for a better future. I can see how that could lead to frustration, despair, maybe even violence.
It's complex, for sure. But there's research from Harvard, actually. Their Inequality and Social Policy Institute, they've done studies that show a direct connection between economic inequality and higher rates of violent crime. When people feel hopeless, they're more likely to make bad choices, desperate choices.
It's just sad to think someone might resort to violence because they feel like there's no other way out. But I imagine it can also breed resentment, anger towards those who seem to have it easier.
Right, that's another factor. Resentment that can be aimed at society in general, or maybe at certain groups seen as more privileged. It's something we see in gang violence. It often comes from feelings of being pushed aside, feeling powerless.
So maybe this shooting in Texarkana, it's a symptom of these deeper issues, things that are bubbling under the surface. It's not just about this one event, but about fixing the root causes.
Exactly. And that brings us to a crucial question. What can we do? After these tragedies, we always hear calls for stricter gun control. And that's an important debate, no doubt, but it's crucial to understand it's only one piece of a much bigger solution.
So limiting access to firearms, that's not going to solve the whole problem. We need to address why people turn to violence in the first place.
Right. It has to be a multifaceted approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a doctor treating a patient. You wouldn't just address the symptoms. You'd want to diagnose the actual illness,
I see what you mean. So what would that diagnosis look like here? Where do we even start with something as complicated as gun violence?
One approach that's showing promise is something called cure violence. It actually treats violence like it's a contagious disease, using public health strategies to try to stop it from spreading.
Wait, a contagious disease? That sounds like a strange way to look at it. How does that work?
I know it sounds a bit odd, but it's been incredibly effective. What they do is identify individuals who are at high risk, either of committing violence or becoming victims, and then they have these people called violence interrupters who step in, try to mediate conflicts before they escalate.
So they're like peacekeepers, intervening before things get out of control. That's interesting. Who are these violence interrupters? How do they gain people's trust?
The most effective ones, they're often people who have experienced violence themselves. They get the street culture, they speak the language, and they have the credibility to de-escalate things. They're mentors, mediators, advocates. They try to connect these at-risk individuals with resources, opportunities, help them turn things around.
It makes sense to use people who've been there. They understand what life on the streets is really like. They can connect. Someone from outside the community couldn't.
Exactly. And the amazing thing is, cure violence has actually been proven to work. There have been studies showing big reductions in shootings and killings where it's been implemented.
That's encouraging to hear. It's something worth looking into further. But I bet it takes a lot of resources to run, and people in the community have to buy into it for it to work.
You're right. To implement a program like that, you need funding. You need trained people, community outreach, ongoing support, and you need everyone to work together. Law enforcement, community organizations, and the residents themselves.
Well, speaking of the community, the articles mention that Tracy Davis's family is asking for unity, for an end to the violence. That's a powerful message coming from people who have experienced such a horrible loss.
Absolutely. It speaks to the need for peace and safety. Every community has that need, and it shows how important these grassroots movements are.
Mm-hmm.
When people get together and demand better, it can create real change.
This shooting must have shaken Texarkana to its core. People are asking, how can we stop this from happening again? How do we make our community safe?
And those are the right questions. There's no easy answer, but even just starting the conversation is a big first step.
So it's not just about reacting to this tragedy, it's about using it to create positive change, turning that grief and anger into action.
You got it. And that action has to address the roots of the problem, not just the symptoms.
Right. We've talked about those socioeconomic factors and programs like Cure Violence. But what about the mental health side of things? The articles talked about fear and anxiety in the community. What kind of impact does trauma like this have on people's mental well-being?
It's something we don't talk about enough, but it's so important. The psychological and emotional scars, they last a lot longer than the physical ones. We see increased rates of PTSD, anxiety, depression, even substance abuse.
Like ripples spreading outward. It affects not just the victims, but the whole community.
That's right. It highlights just how important it is to have access to mental health services, especially in communities hit by violence.
But I'd imagine access to mental health care, that's another area where those socioeconomic factors come in. A lot of people in Texarkana, especially in lower income areas, they probably face barriers to getting help.
Big time. We're talking about a lack of affordable options, long waits for appointments, and the stigma that still surrounds mental health.
So it's a complicated issue. No easy answers. But it's clear that if we want to break the cycle of violence, we have to address mental health needs.
No question. We need a culture where getting help for your mental health is seen as a good thing, a sign of strength. And we need to make sure everyone can access those services, no matter their income or background.
It sounds like a huge task, but investing in mental health care, it's not just about being compassionate. It's about public safety.
Exactly. When you address those underlying mental health needs, you're creating a community that's more resilient, more supportive, and ultimately a safer place for everyone.
So we've talked about a lot: socioeconomic factors, community programs, the mental health side of things. But there's something else I want to bring up, something a bit more philosophical, maybe.
I'm listening. What's on your mind?
We've been focused on the big picture stuff, but what about the individual choices that lead to violence? Where does personal responsibility fit in?
Now that's a deep question. It gets to the core of what it means to be human. It's easy to focus on these larger forces, but in the end, each person has the power to choose how they react to hard times.
So even when you're facing poverty, lack of opportunity, trauma, you still have a choice to either keep that cycle of violence going or choose a different path.
Absolutely. That's where things like resilience, having a moral compass, having good role models, that all comes into play.
Thinking about Tracy Davis's family asking for an end to the violence, maybe their message can inspire people in Texarkana to make different choices, to break free from that cycle.
It's definitely possible. Sometimes all it takes is one voice, one act of courage, and it can set off a chain reaction.
And that brings us to another aspect of this. It's complicated, but really important. Forgiveness. How does a community heal after something like this? Is forgiveness even possible when the hurt runs so deep?
Forgiveness. It's a journey. And it's different for everyone. There's no right or wrong way. It's not about saying what the perpetrator did was okay. It's about letting go of the bitterness and anger that keep us from healing.
So you don't forget what happened, but you find a way to move on without being consumed by resentment.
Exactly. Forgiveness can look different for everyone. Maybe it's the victim and the offender having a conversation. Maybe it's the whole community coming together to reconcile. Or maybe it's just a shift in how you see things inside yourself.
It sounds like a long and hard road, but in the end, it's necessary for healing, both individually and for the community.
It is, and there are things that can help. Counseling that understands trauma, restorative justice programs, support groups.
So even after something so awful, there's still hope for healing and reconciliation. It shows how strong the human spirit really is.
Yeah. It reminds us that even in the darkness, there's always some light. There are people out there working to make things better, to help people understand each other, to build a more peaceful world.
And speaking of making a difference, I'd love to hear about the work being done on the ground in Texarkana. Are there any groups or initiatives that are tackling these issues head on?
That's a great question. It takes us right to the heart of what can be done locally to create lasting change. There are some initiatives that are really encouraging, and they might spark some ideas for what other communities can do too. There are. It's easy to get overwhelmed thinking about these big issues, but seeing people out there on the ground making a real difference, it gives you hope.
It really does. So what's happening in Texarkana that makes you feel hopeful?
Well, one organization that really stands out is the Texarkana Resources for Youth program. They're doing amazing work, especially with young people. They've got these mentorship programs, after-school activities, and job training, all aimed at helping kids avoid the things that can lead to violence.
That's so important, giving them a sense of purpose, a place to belong, showing them there's another way besides the streets.
Exactly. And it's not just about the kids themselves. They work with families, too. Parenting classes, support systems, really trying to strengthen that family unit.
That's great. They're looking at the whole picture, understanding that a strong family is so important for kids. It creates a stable, loving environment.
Right. Another group that's doing great work is Partners in Prevention. They're all about community outreach and education. They're really trying to change the attitudes and behaviors that contribute to violence?
So they're addressing those deeper cultural things we talked about, like how violence becomes normalized, the lack of conflict resolution skills.
You got it. They have workshops on things like how to resolve conflicts peacefully, anger management, building healthy relationships. And it's for everyone, teenagers, parents, community leaders.
Giving people the tools to break those cycles of aggression and build a more peaceful community.
All right, and they also do a lot with bystander intervention, teaching people how to step in safely when they see a situation that could turn violent.
I love that. It's like everyone's taking responsibility for each other's safety. People feel like they can speak up and say, hey, this isn't right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Shifting from, it's not my problem, to, we're all in this together.
It reminds you that change doesn't have to come from the government or some huge program. It can start with individuals, making different choices every day.
That's such an important point. We all have the power to be part of the solution. Even small acts of kindness, being compassionate, having the courage to do the right thing, it can make a difference.
Speaking of small acts, I was reading about this group of artists in Texarkana. They organized a mural project after the shooting. They got young people involved, painting murals all over the neighborhood, promoting peace and unity.
Oh, that's a great example of how art can be used for healing. It gives young people a way to express themselves, to be creative, and it helps them reclaim their community.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a powerful message of hope. It shows that something good can come out of even the darkest times.
And it reminds us that we need to support creative outlets for young people, especially in communities that have been through something like this.
Give them spaces to express themselves, build relationships, a way to escape the negative things on the streets.
And investing in things like parks, libraries, community centers, safe, positive places for everyone.
Creating a community where young people feel valued, supported, like they can make good choices.
Well, we've covered a lot today. Gun violence, the role of poverty and opportunity, community programs, mental health, forgiveness, and what individuals can do.
It's been a tough conversation, but also hopeful. We've seen how destructive violence is, but also how resilient people are, and how dedicated people are to making things better.
Definitely both sides of the coin. What stands out to you the most?
Honestly, it's those local initiatives that really give me hope. Seeing people out there every day working so hard to make a difference in their community, it's inspiring.
I agree. It's those grassroots efforts that really drive change. It shows that no matter how big the problem seems, we can make a difference. One person, one action, one community at a time.
So to our listener who sent in these articles about Texarkana, I hope this deep dive has helped you understand this complicated issue a little better. It's a conversation we need to keep having in Texarkana and everywhere.
It's easy to feel helpless when you see these things happening, but remember, every voice, every action counts. What can you do in your own community to build peace, promote understanding, and support people affected by violence? That's the question we should all be asking ourselves.
Powerful words to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.
Today is your lucky day. Today is the day that our $3 website works for you, paying you directly to your PayPal daily. Imagine $3 ongoing continuous payments to your PayPal account. Imagine falling asleep and waking up to $300 in your PayPal account. How would this make you feel? How could this help you? What bills could you pay? What kind of fun could you have? What does that retirement look like now? All for a one-time payment of $3. This website is DFY done for you, fully built and completely hosted, and never stops collecting payments for you. You have spent $3 on coffee on a regular, but that coffee won't help you create multiple streams of income. Click the link below.